Bonjour, good day. Thank you for being here. Off the top, I want to talk a bit about what this last day in session means. First of all, a lot of folks are considering this as if it's a foregone conclusion, that today's the last day in Parliament and we won't be coming back in September. I want to put it out there that that does not have to be the case. If the Liberals really want to do any of the things that they promised they wanted to do, if they were truly interested in delivering the help that people need, we can still get those things done. There is no reason to believe that there has to be an election in September. It doesn't. We've got a 4-year mandate, so we've got 2 more years. So if we take, for example, childcare is something New Democrats firmly believe in. We know this pandemic has disproportionately hit women, and we know that we have to invest in a childcare that is universal and affordable and accessible so that women can return to work. In order to do that, let's pass the legislation required. I look at it this way. Let me call the Liberals bluff. If they want to get this done, we can sit anytime to make this happen. We are committed to it, and we want to see people have access to childcare. Let's look at pharmacare. If the Liberals really wanted to make pharmacare happen, despite the fact they voted against it, we are ready. We've said very clearly we support the government's own commission report and agree that it needs to happen and are ready to put forward legislation and have done so. Despite the Liberals voting against it, we're still ready to work on pharmacare. If the Liberals really want to tackle the housing crisis, if they really want to make sure the ultra-rich pay their fair share, if they really want to have a recovery that focuses on people, all of these things are things that we can do right now. There is no reason to delay. There's no reason to go to an election. If the Liberals were doing more than just a symbolic gesture or just doing it for show, if they actually wanted to help people, then let's do it. But if the Liberals call an election in the late summer or early fall, I want this to be also clear. They're calling an election because they want all the power, not because it benefits people, not because it actually helps get things done. We have shown, even if the Conservatives are opposed to things like paid sick leave, we pushed it forward and made it happen, and we're able to deliver paid sick leave. We've shown if the Liberals want to work with us, we can speed up legislation, get it passed, and make sure people get the benefit. We have shown that and done that countless times in this pandemic, and are prepared to do that moving forward. The whole narrative that the Liberals are talking about, this toxic parliament, is a fake narrative, because we are here to make things happen. If it's going to benefit people, we are ready to do it. So I want that to be really clear. The Liberals have done a lot of things for show, and we'll see in a couple of months if it was truly for show or if they meant it. If they call an election, it was all for show. And I just want to highlight one last thing. And the Liberals have, on top of doing these things for show, have failed people in so many regards, have failed Indigenous people not delivering clean drinking water, have failed when it comes to their election promise of pharmacare, have failed when it comes to the idea of the ultra-rich paying their fair share when they voted against our motion to tax the ultra-rich. They have failed to deliver the help that people need. And it was only because New Democrats were there that we were able to double the CERB. We were able to increase the wage subsidy. We were able to deliver help for students and bring in a paid sick leave, all of which have helped millions of Canadians get through this pandemic. It would not have happened but for New Democrats being there. And we are ready to continue to do that same work, whether it's through the summer or when we return for our fall session. Donc, je veux souligner quelque chose de tellement important, le fait que le gouvernement libéral, dans leur avis, c'est un fait accompli qu'on va avoir une élection, on va avoir une élection cet automne ou cet été. J'aimerais souligner que ce n'est pas un fait accompli. On a un mandat de 4 ans. Donc, ce n'est pas nécessaire de faire déclencher une élection. Ce n'est pas nécessaire de déclencher une élection dans les prochains mois. Et je veux aussi souligner, si le gouvernement libéral, si Justin Trudeau déclenche une élection pendant l'été ou pendant l'automne, ça veut dire que tout ce qu'ils ont promis était seulement des gestes symboliques. Parce que s'ils sont sérieux de faire le travail, on est là pour faire passer les projets de loi qui vont avancer le système de garderie accessible, universel. On est là pour s'assurer qu'on a une relance qui cible et priorise les gens et les travailleurs et travailleuses. On est là pour faire passer les projets de loi pour défendre notre environnement et créer des emplois de qualité. Donc, si le gouvernement libéral, si Justin Trudeau vraiment veut faire des choses, on est là pour faire ce qu'on a déjà fait pendant la pandémie. C'était nous qui avons fait passer un projet de loi pour mettre en œuvre un programme de congés de maladie payés. C'était nous qui avons forcé le gouvernement de doubler la PCU. C'était nous qui avons livré l'aide pour les étudiants. Et c'était nous qui avons augmenté la subvention salariale. Donc, on a déjà montré comment on peut travaillent ensemble pour aider les gens. Donc, si le gouvernement libéral et Justin Trudeau déclenchent une élection, ça veut dire que toutes ces promesses étaient fausses, c'était des gestes symboliques. Merci. Thank you so much. With that, I'm ready to take your questions.
And we'll now take questions, starting with questions on the phone. As a reminder, as usual, one question, one follow-up per reporters. Nous allons maintenant passer aux questions, en commençant par les questions au téléphone. Comme à l'habitude, une question suivie par journaliste. Opérateur, avons-nous une première question?
Thank you. Merci. So please press star 1 on the device's keypad if you have a question. Faites étoile sur votre appareil pour toute question. We have a first question from Annie Bergeron-Oliver from CTV National News. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Thank you
Hi
for
there.
taking my questions. Hi. So I know you mentioned it in your opening statement about how the Liberals' narrative is fake. They have been calling Parliament dysfunctional. They said it's toxic and that there have been obstructionism type tactics from opposition parties. What do you think about the characterization that the Trudeau government is giving Parliament, and how would you characterize Parliament right now?
I would disagree. When the Liberals want to get things passed that we disagree with, they've worked with the Conservatives to pass those things. When they wanted to pass rapidly back to work legislation that we were opposed to, they got support from the Conservatives and put that through at record time. When they wanted to deliver help for Canadians that we forced them and fought and put pressure on them to deliver, we were able to rapidly pass things through like the paid sick leave. So it really is a question of whether this government wants Parliament to work, not whether it can or cannot work. If they want Parliament to work for people, we are ready to make sure we deliver the help that people need. If they want to cut services or bring people back to work like the Conservatives want, then they've worked with them in the past and are prepared to do that again. It's really a matter of their choice. And whether opposition parties raise concerns or bring forward opposition day motions to challenge the government, that's normal. That's the role of opposition, to hold to account the government. But if they want to pass bills, we have shown, we've got evidence, it can be done. And the Liberals have shown very clearly that they're not at all in any way limited to working just with us. They've worked with the Conservatives to bring in back to work legislation to cut help that people need. They're prepared to do that. We're prepared to help people. If they want to help people, we are here. We're ready to do that.
You also mentioned in your opening remarks that an election is not a foregone conclusion. But based on what you've seen from the Liberals and the way that they've pushed through these recent bills and the characterization of Parliament, are you expecting an election to come in the fall? Is this something you think the Liberals want?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question, because I want to again highlight, while I don't think it is a foregone conclusion, and while I know it's not, we have got a 4-year mandate. We can get things done. We can return to Parliament in the fall. You're right. There are a number of indications from this Liberal government, from Justin Trudeau, that they are looking for an excuse to go to an election. They want an election. And we can look at a number of examples, but most concretely, I asked the question very clearly, while we are still dealing with this pandemic, will you commit to not trigger an election? I make that commitment. And to have an election in August or September, when we are just getting past the point of vaccination, would be to put at risk all the work that we've done so far. If we just get to the point of having everyone vaccinated and just get to the point of having lower numbers and then immediately go to an election, it could jeopardize all the hard work we've done, all the sacrifices people have made. And to me, that would be an irresponsible decision that would only be for the Liberals to try to get power, as opposed to doing what's in the interest of Canadians. And for me, the sole question about whether we go to an election should be, in the midst of a pandemic, is it in the best interest of Canadians? And it is not. Once we beat this thing, once we are beyond it, we're open to minority governments sometimes fall, and that's a different thing. But it does not make sense to do it while we are still in the midst of the pandemic and we are not past this thing yet.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. Next question. Prochaine question. Cormac McSweeney from City News. Please go ahead. Your line is open.
Yes, Mr. Singh, I just want you to respond to something that Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole said a little bit earlier today in his speech to caucus. He said that the choice for Canadians ahead of a potential possible election is between the Conservatives and a coalition. And he framed the NDP Bloc and Greens as just different shades of red, and that you're all sort of working together. How do you respond to the Conservative attack that you're nothing more than a shade of the Liberal Party?
Well, let's look at the evidence. I think we've got a really clear example of how we can address this question. People want universal pharmacare. It's broadly popular. People want to know that their medication is covered. We're the only country in the world that doesn't have medication included in our healthcare system. New Democrats presented it. Conservatives voted against it, as well as the Liberals. So in there, that's something that Canadians want. And the only people that benefit from voting against pharmacare are the big pharmaceuticals. So in that case, the Liberals and Conservatives stood together with the big pharmaceuticals against people. Let's look at taxing the ultra-rich. Also something widely and wildly popular amongst Canadians. They believe that the ultra-rich should pay their fair share. They know that the ultra-rich have all sorts of loopholes and tactics to evade paying their fair share, and they think it's unfair and wrong. Canadians believe that this is the right thing to do. We put forward that motion. The Liberals voted against it, as well as the Conservatives. Again, both Liberals and Conservatives took the side of the ultra-rich over people, and it meant that people were hurt because we couldn't increase revenue to invest in people. We look at the profits in long-term care, something that has been a horrible impact of this pandemic, that our seniors and our loved ones in long-term care, particularly in for-profit care, bore the brunt of this pandemic. We put forward a motion saying, let's get profit out of long-term care, starting with Rivera, which is wholly owned by a federal subsidiary. And again, we are on the side of seniors, loved ones, people who want to see quality care for their loved ones in long-term care. And the Liberals and Conservatives voted against that. So we've got ample evidence that when it comes to what people care about, the things that were the most pressing and urgent issues, seniors in long-term care, making sure the ultra-rich pay their fair share, making sure our healthcare system in a pandemic covers the needs of the people, New Democrats stood on the side of people, and Liberals and Conservatives stood on the side of the ultra-rich, the ultra-wealthy, and hurt people.
And as a follow-up, I just want to ask about NDP readiness for an election campaign. Your party's financial struggles over the last few years have been well reported on, and I know that you had said that you had paid off the campaign debt from the last election, but how are you in terms of financial readiness? Would your party have to take out another loan in order to run an election campaign? And where does the NDP stand when it comes to nominating candidates for a next election?
I really appreciate the question. We are well along the way. We've nominated close to 100 candidates. We are excited about the quality of those candidates. We are enjoying a lot of support from people who've seen us fight for them and fight to deliver the help they need. So there's lots of support from people. And I'm honored by that momentum and that support that's been building because people have seen us fight for them. We also not only cleared our debt, but we have a war chest where we are ready to fight an election at any time. We have secured everything necessary for an election. We have a much bigger budget than last time. We're going to look at a budget that will be double what we spent, or more than double that what we spent in the last election. So we are financed up. We have candidates coming. We are excited and we are ready. But despite that, and the momentum that we have, despite that, it might be in my party's advantage for an election. It might be in my personal advantage, but it is not the way I make a decision. In a pandemic, I'm not looking to see what's in the benefit for me or my party. I want to fight for people. And I know that in a pandemic, when we are just months away from getting over a next major obstacle and hurdle, we shouldn't be planning an election. We should be fighting for people. And that's why I've been very clear throughout this whole pandemic, I will not be triggering an election. I think it's the wrong thing to do. And if Trudeau does it, it's because they want power, but we will be ready to fight it.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. There are no further questions registered at this time. Il n'y a plus de questions à ce moment-ci. Back to the room. De retour à la salle.
We'll now take questions from the room. Mia?
Good afternoon, Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. Just wondering how you plan to mark Canada Day this year, given the discussions about what should happen with that holiday this year.
It's a really important question, and it's an important reflection. There are a lot of folks that are used to celebrating Canada Day. There's a lot of fond memories around the day. It's a holiday, and there's also great events that are held. This year, people are feeling a little differently about it, and I think we should sit with that. I think people are looking at the legacy of Canada, and while there's things that we can be proud of, absolutely, there are things that are really horrible and that are part of our Canadian legacy. And it does us a disservice when we ignore the injustice, we ignore the bad parts of our history and the ongoing legacy and the impact of those horrible things that have happened and continue to happen. I think we can build a better country when we reflect on where we've come, the injustice that Canada perpetrated against Indigenous people and others, and that we look to the future. I think there's a time for us to reflect on the type of country we want to build, because people want to build something better. When I saw the outpouring of grief and mourning after the discovery of those 215 kids, there's also a really positive desire amongst Canadians to do something about it, that we've got to just go beyond mourning and being in that symbolic moment. We have to take that moment as an opportunity to do something to fix it. And I think that is a powerful thing. So I think on this candidate, there'll be a lot of reflection. There'll be a lot of visioning about what we want to build for our country and how we can build a better place. And there has to be an honest reflection on the injustice and harm that's been suffered by Indigenous people and a number of people that have been directly impacted by Canadian policies. And I think we can do that reflection and we can move to a better place. And I think it's an important time for us to do that.
I'm also wondering, Muslim charities are concerned that they're being unfairly singled out for audits by the Canada Revenue Agency. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I've spoken with leaders in the Muslim community who've raised this very same issue and have felt really hurt by the fact that they are singled out disproportionately without any evidence, without any objective reason to do so. Yet those that perpetrate hate against Muslims seem to not be the focus of federal attention or federal resources. And that has happened for so long. And so the really big turning point when we pushed for the banning of the Proud Boys was more than just one organization. It was really a turning point to acknowledge that the people that are the real threats to the safety and security of Canadians are those hate groups, those divisive, extreme right-wing, white supremacist groups that promote a radical message of hatred, which has resulted in the most recent killings. The mass killings many of them have been directly associated with hate-motivated violence against Muslims. And so the Muslim community is feeling that injustice and that unfairness about being targeted on one hand, but then nothing being done to protect them on the other. And so this is a real pain that leaders in the Muslim community are feeling. And it should be a moment for us to say, that can't continue. That is wrong. And we need to put our resources towards the real threats and stop discriminating people arbitrarily without any evidence. That should never happen.
And last question in the room, David.
David Thurton, CBC News. So how are you going to mark Canada Day? Have you made up your mind? Is that something that you're going to celebrate? Are you going to celebrate in a different way? All good if you haven't made up your mind. It's about a week away, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a time of reflection. So I've been reflecting on what that looks like. I know there are people that are looking for, this might be the one big event that people get to come together and connect as a community, given the reopenings. This is the next major event. So people are probably looking forward to that opportunity to get out and meet. But then people really are reflecting on the painful legacy of what Canada has meant to Indigenous people and what residential schools have meant. And I think it's an important reflection. So I'm in the midst of that reflection as well. I think there's an opportunity on Canada Day to do exactly what I talked about, just visioning the type of country we want to build and where we want to go, and reflecting on the harms that have been done and thinking about where we can go if we make better choices, if we remedy the injustice, if we walk the path of reconciliation. I'm really hopeful that we can get to a better place. And I think that's an important reflection. When we reflect on things that are bad and horrible and painful, it's only useful if we can reflect on those things and then commit to a better path forward. And that's what I want to do.
So I'm just wondering, do you, I get that you feel that Parliament can work, and we still have a number of years within this mandate for it to work, but just what's your assessment, Mr. Singh? Do you feel like we're operating in dysfunction? It's been poisoned, it's toxic. Do you agree with any of those characterizations, or do you think it's working?
I reject all those characterizations completely and absolutely. We've got a track record to look at. We can look at this past year and look at what's been achieved. And as I pointed out, Liberals have not hesitated to go and work with the Conservatives when they want to take away people's rights. And they've done that. And they brought forward back to work legislation that you all recall. They didn't hesitate to do that, and they knew the Conservatives would support them on it. That was in the Port of Montreal. And they knew that if they wanted to get help for people and speed that up, we were more than ready to do that. And we've been very active and involved in passing legislation that gives people the help they need. We can look at a number of examples that I didn't mention. Let's look at C12, climate accountability. This is a bill that we absolutely believe that needs to happen. It's Jack Layton's legacy. Jack Layton started the idea of climate accountability. and we worked to make that bill better. And we've got lots of stakeholders that acknowledge that great work. And I want to shout out Laurel Collins, Alexandre Boulouris, and our entire team that worked on this, our staff that made this bill better. But we have shown with clear evidence, not just speculation, but real clear evidence that we were able to work to get bills passed that were good for people. We made improvements on bills that actually helped more people. And the Liberals have shown that when they want to work with us to get help to people, we deliver. When they want to cut help and hurt folks, they work with the Conservatives and they've delivered. It's really a matter of their choice what they want to do. And we've shown again and again, we always choose working for people, delivering the help they need.
This concludes the press conference. Ceci met fait la conférence de presse. Merci.
Yeah, Steve, thanks so much. I wanted to get a little bit nostalgic because this might be the last time we use this, right? Because it might be in the next parliament, we'll be in a different setting. So there's a lot of moments that have happened here that were pretty special. So thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. The conference is now ended.